Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into the United Nations, specifically, its role here in the 21st century.
Right. There are lots of questions floating around based on our sources about whether the UN is, well, really effective anymore.
Exactly. So our mission today is to kind of unpack that, look at the challenges, how it's adapting or trying to adapt.
And hopefully give you a clearer picture of its relevance today.
Okay, so let's just jump right in. The big one, conflict resolution. Is the UN still the main player when it comes to sorting out global conflicts?
Historically, yes, it was absolutely central, providing that space for talk for peacekeeping forces.
But now it feels different sometimes.
It does. I mean, the Security Council's veto power, that's a huge factor. Geopolitics often gets in the way of decisive action.
So it's sometimes gridlocked.
Often, yeah. But, even if they aren't making the headline resolutions, the behind-the-scenes diplomacy, the support for ceasefires, that stuff still matters. It's still happening.
Okay. And what about newer threats? Things like terrorism, cyber warfare stuff the founders probably weren't thinking about.
Yeah, good question. The UN has tried to adapt. They've set up frameworks, passed resolutions, pushing for international cooperation, sharing information.
There's always a but, isn't there?
Well, yeah. These threats, they don't respect borders, right? So the UN is still heavily reliant on member states actually doing things, enforcing things. And that willingness varies.
Which ties right back into criticisms of the structure itself, especially the Security Council. What are people really unhappy about there?
The core argument, it's that the permanent members, the P5, don't really reflect global power today. It's kind of stuck in 1945.
And the veto power they hold.
Exactly. It can lead to paralysis or, resolutions that protect narrow interests, not collective security.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel it hurts the UN's legitimacy.
Okay, so that structure issue is big. What about the tension between, like, a country's right to run itself sovereignty and the need to step in for human rights? How does the UN handle that?
That is maybe the fundamental tension. The UN Charter puts sovereignty first,
Click.
but you have the responsibility to protect principle, R2P, the idea that if a state is failing massively to protect its own people from, say, genocide or war crimes, the international community should step in.
Sounds good in theory.
In theory, but applying it, hugely controversial. Some countries see it as basically an excuse for interference, a violation of their sovereignty.
Right, and that feeds into the calls for reforming the Security Council. Who's pushing for change?
Well, you have countries like Germany, Japan, India, Brazil, regional powers basically saying, hey, the world's changed, we should have a permanent seat at the table.
Makes sense. So why is it so hard to change?
Power. The current P5 members are, generally speaking, not very keen on diluting their own influence. It's politically incredibly difficult, even if many agree the current setup is, well, outdated.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. Humanitarian crises. When disaster strikes, what's the UN's role? How good are they at actually getting help delivered?
They're usually central to coordinating the international response. UN agencies handle logistics, raise funds, provide food, shelter, medical care.
So they do a lot.
A huge amount. But they face massive challenges, too. Funding gaps are common. Getting access to people in conflict zones can be really hard or blocked politically. And sometimes the sheer scale of a crisis is just overwhelming.
And peacekeeping. What do those missions actually involve today? Are they still just about monitoring ceasefires?
Not really, no. They're much more complex now. Often it involves protecting civilians directly, helping with political transitions, building up police forces, promoting rule of law. It's a much bigger job.
And the results? Mixed.
Very mixed. It really depends on the mandate they're given, the resources they have, and critically, whether the host government and other groups on the ground actually cooperate.
The UN isn't alone in this space, though. How does it work with, say, NGOs or other international bodies?
Oh, collaboration is key. They partner constantly with NGOs, with the World Bank, with regional groups like the African Union or the EU. They have to leverage everyone's expertise and resources. It's essential.
Let's talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. Big, ambitious goals for 2030. What's stopping faster progress?
It's a whole mix of things, really. Poverty, inequality, climate change is a huge one, obviously. Ongoing conflicts just derail everything.
And money, political will.
Yeah, insufficient funding, and frankly, sometimes a lack of real political commitment globally to push them forward as urgently as needed.
So looking at all this, the challenges, the criticisms, the ways it is trying to adapt, what could a better, more effective UN look like down the road?
You'd probably need, well, a Security Council that actually reflects the 21st century, maybe stronger ways to enforce human rights standards, closer ties with civil society, perhaps.
More agile, maybe?
Definitely more agile, better at using technology, quicker to respond to new kinds of threats.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Conflict, new threats, structure, human rights, SDGs. It's clear the UN faces some serious headwinds.
Absolutely. And you always come back to that basic tension, don't you? The dream of global cooperation versus the reality of national interests.
Yeah, that seems to be the constant thread. So that leads us to our final thought for you, the listener. Given everything we've discussed, all the complexities, if you had to pick one single change, what do you think could most significantly boost the UN's effectiveness in tackling today's global problems? Something to ponder.